the Spark Festival, and then this is LuminaX Health Accelerator doing one of the events with some amazing founders who are part of as a mentor or alumni. So yeah, Spark Festival is Australia's festival of innovation, tech, and ideas. I think there's like heaps of events happening right now in person and online. And yeah, thanks for choosing this topic. And yeah, looking forward to having a chat with everyone. So before we begin, I just wanted to introduce a bit more about who I am, about our speakers and panelists today. So my name is Dren. I'm the program director with LuminaX, which is a health tech accelerator. I'll be your host for today and facilitating this panel. Before we start, quickly, just wanted to chat about 3 minutes about LuminaX and why is this relevant to this topic today. So yeah, LuminaX is a 14-week program designed to develop and launch 10 Australian health tech startups each year. So basically, we provide a range of support, including mentoring, coaching, workshops, and yeah, we have about 30 amazing founder, entrepreneurs, health clinicians in our program that provide support. And then the last year we provided also investment as well, $50,000 of investment with each startup that got into the program. So we're based on the Gold Coast, and the program is run in person. However, the cohorts that we had are from different states in Australia. Our key focus is mostly health, not mostly, but actually it's just health. Anyone solving a problem in health using technology, whether that's like platforms or databases or mobile solutions and so on, and especially those that also are looking to utilize AI and machine learning. That's what we're looking for. We have had a very diverse group of startups in the past 2 years. So we've run 2 cohorts already from platforms, apps, and medical devices, but there's a dominance in digital in general in our cohorts. So what's interesting, we received recently a lot of applications and accepted at least 4 of them that rely heavy on AI and machine learning. And this is some of the patterns we're actually seeing as we progress into this decade. So yeah, very exciting to see some interesting startups and really passionate about helping them as well. Just quickly about so we're running the program also next year. I mean, it's early now, but still February applications will be open. If you're interested and there's a founder there is looking for help, just you can register your interest at our luminax.com.au in our website. There's a section there. Yeah, cool. So now back to the panel and a bit more context to why health tech. So basically, health tech is currently one of the hottest industry for founders and investors. I'm sure you've seen that and you've read. There's a lot of development in that side. So unicorns just in this industry grew by 100% a lot in 21 compared to a year earlier. And the global health tech received around 50 billion in investment this year. It's a huge jump. So this session will focus on the emerging health tech startups, some of the characteristics we're seeing within the founders that are here with us today, but also what they're anticipating and they're seeing in this industry as a whole. I have the pleasure to introduce our panelists. We have some amazing founders. Actually, one of them is a mentor and 2 are alumni as well. And thank you guys for joining me today and chatting about the future of health tech. So can you maybe briefly present yourself and your startup, maybe starting with Elliot and Kaitlyn and then Nic.
Hello, everyone. So my name's Elliot, and I'm the founder of Heroes. And at Heroes, we enrich people's lives through accessible and personalised auditory training throughout the world. And we take this through a position of gamification and empathy.
Sweet.
Amazing, Elliot. Hi, I'm Kaitlyn. I'm the founder of Eduvidd. We have a massive goal of rebranding lifelong learning and continued professional development, not just in healthcare, but across many other industries, so that we can improve both patient outcomes and staff outcomes across the world.
Sweet.
Thank you, Kaitlyn. And I'm Nic. I'm the founder of Midnight Health. So we're a direct-to-patient digital healthcare company. We have 4 consumer-facing brands in Yulee, focused on women's healthcare, Stagger, focused on men's healthcare, and we've also recently launched Hub.Health, focused on older demographic and chronic conditions, as well as Vitality, which is our world-first precision gut health supplement as well. So yeah, really trying to focus on building a complete health ecosystem for managing your health.
Yeah, thanks, Nic. Thanks to everyone. So staying with you, Nic, it's amazing seeing you, your startup, how quickly has evolved. But can you tell us more about where you're at right now, and a bit more about the sub-industry you're in? Yeah,
so I guess in terms of us as a business, we launched in February last year. So we're, I guess, a pretty new business still. We've managed to see some pretty strong growth through that period. So, we've got 43 people in the team now. We raised a $4 million seed round in November last year from NIB, the health insurer, who then followed with a $12 million round in July as well. So that's obviously contributed to the growth that we're seeing. But as you mentioned, it's also a space that's getting a lot of activity as well. So this direct to patient digital healthcare, we're seeing a lot of action happening in terms of people focused on telehealth or pharmacy delivery, those types of services. So there's a lot of competitors in this space, but I think ultimately where we're at as a business right now, we focus on telehealth, prescriptions, pharmacy delivery, but we're really focused on how do we go from here to build a more complete health ecosystem, and see that as kind of the gap and where businesses are going to, or the ones who win are going to transition to over the next 5 to 10 years. And so we're really focused on how do we integrate and build more and more products and services to have a more holistic environment to manage your health from.
Yeah, would you say this is relatively new services, or it just has evolved in a different way?
It's just evolving. I think, in terms of the adoption of digital healthcare, the pandemic certainly sped that up. I think, we were always going to head in that direction over the next 10 years. It's not something that's only evolved as a result of the pandemic. However, we've definitely condensed 10 years adoption into 2 years, right? And I think that's come not only from the consumers themselves, but also the industry itself, in terms of clinicians moving to telehealth and digitally led care, investment coming into this space at a rapid rate. So yeah, I think we're heading in that direction, and it's an evolution of different services that already exist. And now that we're in such an infancy, the challenge now becomes the businesses that are offering isolated services to move into now providing more complete and I guess more advanced customer experience, I suppose.
Yeah, sweet. How about you, Elliot? A bit more about where Heroes is and where you guys are and the sub industry, I guess. Would you call it the gaming industry, the education, or?
Yeah, that's a good question, John. Probably more towards gamified learning, yeah, we've really seen that. So essentially, it's been a very exciting journey, and to start with, we really wanted to validate the motivation factors around training. Just to put it in a bit of context, so when you receive a cochlear implant or a hearing aid, because it's a whole new way of hearing, you really need to train your brain to reinterpret or interpret, if you're hearing for the first time, what those sounds mean. And so essentially, a lot of what we've done with Heroes is to contain over 60 gamified activities, covering the auditory training pathway from environmental sound all the way to vocabulary, background sound, different accents. And so the first part of our journey was really validating how people can be motivated to learn, especially in a training environment, because regardless of your training physically or mentally, it can be quite a challenging situation for a lot of people. And so that was something that we wanted to get right. And we were able to validate that along with the auditory training content. We raised a pre-seed round last year, so 550K, and that really helped us with moving forward for the next stage, which is working around the user-centric side. We've seen a big gap in the market around user-centric. It wasn't that long ago. So essentially, when I received my cochlear implant less than 10 years ago, I was given a CD and a workbook as part of the auditory training. I felt that to be very static. It wasn't accessible, and that sort of built the foundation blocks for Heroes. And so we've been able to validate the gamified learning with the content in Australia. We've collaborated with eHealth Queensland that has helped us work with a lot of hospitals in Queensland. And now we're focusing on the US market to start with for a user-centric model. At this stage, we have about 2,000 monthly active users, with the activities being played around 45,000 times a month, which is what training is all about.
Yeah, sweet. And is there any patterns you're seeing, for example, in keeping in mind Heroes with innovating towards the future of health tech?
Yeah, so I think becoming again more user-centric. It wasn't, yeah, so there seemed to be the technology great, for cochlear implants and hearing aids, but there really needs to be a lot more focused on patient care. And so it's really good when you do get a hearing aid, but just following, it's really only the first part of the journey. And so what we're seeing now in the shift is the ability to create better patient care through a user-centric experience, as opposed to having to go to the hospital all the time and just have a checkup there. And not to say that the hospitals aren't needed or anything like that, but it also allows the parties to work together to maximize outcomes as best they can.
Yeah, sweet. I know you have like a very focus on user and user-centric, so I have some questions on that a bit later, but maybe Kaitlyn, if you could just like tell us more about where Eduvidd is and like what's the sub-industry you're in and how that works.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, before I jump into my business, I have to say that it is such a privilege to be featured alongside Midnight Health and Heroes. Like, what incredible businesses that are doing some really awesome stuff for patients. I'm a patient myself, so I'm always looking for innovative services that I can use myself, because, you know, going through the system and, as Elliot said, having to constantly go into hospital or seeing specialists when ideally you'd want to be able to do as much of the, you know, the proactive work and being your best self at, you know, on your own journey, not just needing to constantly go into facilities. And same thing for Midnight Health, like being able to access, you know, all these different drugs is fantastic online. So I just needed to say that first, because I just love both of their businesses. But yeah, for myself, so our sub-industry is certainly lifelong learning. And as I mentioned before, continued professional development. If there's any clinicians on the Zoom call at the moment, whenever, you know, people say the word CPD, it's usually like, oh yeah, that thing that I have to do as part of my requirements. You know, nurses have to do 20 hours a year. And, you know, the intention of CPD is to make sure that clinicians are up to date with all of the latest information in healthcare. And, you know, that rapidly changes every 60 days. You know, you're seeing more and more new studies and information coming out. And so the idea of the mechanism of CPD is to keep them at the top of their game, which is obviously then resulting in better patient outcomes. So unfortunately, I think just from the tools and the way that CPD has been delivered traditionally, that has lost a lot of effect, and has become, yes, more of a tick and flick compliance exercise. But I believe that now that we have all these cool new technologies, that we can start to reinvent what that looks like. Like for us, we've just started a new product build on Monday. We're effectively closing a round of around 450,000 as our seed round, and a lot of that cash is going towards this build of this new type of CPD delivery and also content. And that's going to mean that we can offer that kind of service for a hospital end to end for every single one of their staff, whether you're a doctor or a nurse or an allied health professional, and you'll get CPD that you're actually excited to do, that has more alignment with how you can become better in your role, or how you can transition to another role, or how you can open up opportunities in your career. And also, more importantly, getting that patient aspect. As I mentioned, I'm a patient. So I feel often, the reason why most people go into healthcare is because they want to help, and they want to be patient-centric, and they want to make a difference. And there are things along the way that can make you feel disconnected from the patient. And so bringing that perspective back in, and we're really passionate about doing that with our content and training, and also just re-inspiring the professional. Like there's so many barriers and lots of challenges in being a healthcare professional at the moment. And obviously we're seeing a lot of healthcare professionals leaving the industry, which is obviously really challenging, kind of downstream for the patient too. So using CPD is not only a more clear opportunity to progress your career, but to also remind you why you wanted to become a healthcare professional in the first place, and connecting yourself back to the clinician. So yeah, but in a nutshell, we've had an MVP for a little while, and that's been used by thousands of nurses here in Australia. But now we're investing in basically a new platform. We're expanding out all of that content so we can cover, everyone in the healthcare team. And we're also expanding into the UK at the moment. So lots of exciting things happening. And so, we would like to think that we're at the start of the hockey stick and the new adventure. So I'm probably a bit earlier than my other two amazing panelists, but I'm coming, guys. I'm going to catch up.
That's great. You mentioned that you're building a new kind of software like app right now. Is it because you need to scale and then reach out more, or is it because you found a way? You found that you need to focus in a different area on the.
Yeah, it's probably multifaceted, but I would say that the two main things that we're focused on is a more, a delivery mechanism for CPD that works better with busy professionals. So for example, one of the new features we're building with our platform is going to be interactive podcasts. So you can be driving to work, listening to a CPD Verified podcast. Halfway through, you get asked some sort of learning assessment or question or scenario that you can then answer in the car, and then it kind of goes yes or no, and then takes you through that journey. So that's a really unique way that we're able to deliver learning in those dead zones or downtime that we have. And particularly not only being a professional in a pretty hectic career with 12-hour shifts, you've also got families and other things outside of your career. So trying to find ways to deliver a really mobile, user-friendly experience for CPD, and also building more smarts around how we deliver CPD. So being able to say, okay, I'm a nurse in aged care, for example, or I'm an enrolled nurse, I want to become a registered nurse, or I want to go into the ICU ward. And so we can create pathways leveraging technologies like adaptive learning and some level of AI in the background to be able to design those experiences too. So yeah, just making it a lot more intuitive and personalized for the professional at the end of the day, and also integrating with hospitals. So our main customers right now, it's like direct to consumer, nurses sign up on our platform, like through our website, or we have channel partners, and that's kind of our main go-to-market. But ideally, we want to get into hospitals, having hospitals also paying for their staff to be, to have all of those advantages that I'm talking about. And so doing that is like really challenging, being in a hospital ecosystem. So part of the build is to be able to make that fairly seamless and an enjoyable experience for the end user, the clinician.
Yeah, sweet. Thanks, Kaitlyn. So maybe Nic, I would love to hear more about what you think the future of healthcare looks like for the customer. Having that customer-centric approach as well, and then on top of that, maybe how technology really is improving accessibility to those services.
Yeah. So look, I think when we look at the technology adoption and the innovation that's happened in most other aspects of our lives, right? We've created really great customer experiences, and healthcare is certainly lagged behind for many different reasons. It's obviously completely complex and regulated and very difficult compared to other industries. But I think over the next 10 years, we're going to start to see a real uplift in the actual customer experience. We've all been patients ourselves, and I think that's the other. We talk about people as patients instead of customers, but in reality, if we approach them as customers and had a customer-centric approach like many other businesses do, then we start to view how can we actually make this a better experience. So, I think what we'll find is that healthcare will become predominantly digitally led. We'll enter into a digital-first environment, into a digital front door that will then assess what we need and allow us to move seamlessly between the online and offline environment. That's ultimately where we need to get to. I think we need to reach the point where our healthcare data becomes captured in a single environment or has access to the environments around it. They've mandated FHIR data structure in the US so that people can start to have better interoperability between providers, and that's something that we need to get to, whether we build and integrate ourselves or whether the government plays a role in how we mandate access to people's data so that we can provide better continuity of care. And that'll also enable us to move into more preventative healthcare as well. So, there's plenty of data and data sets and algorithms that exist to identify whether someone's susceptible to a certain chronic disease in the future. But the biggest challenge for us right now is actually capturing that data in a single location so that we can then understand it and help to move into that preventative space. So I think as we move into this customer-centric model and consolidate the fragmentation, that the customer experience will get better and we can move from treating conditions into preventing them as well. And your other point there, Dren, around accessibility is a major one, right? So not only is there a resource shortage that's only projected to get worse, we also currently have a major issue for people who are in regional and remote areas. And it's not isolated to Australia. This is a global problem, and technology can certainly allow us to provide access to care, to allow people to have a consult, have pharmacy delivery, have access to digital healthcare services such as digital therapeutics to help manage chronic conditions. They all help us uplift people's ability to access care, avoid hospitalization and get onto things early. So our business at Midnight Health, we haven't been around for very long. We've delivered to over 51% of postcodes in Australia, and so that just speaks to improving accessibility, and it's something that has just naturally happening by giving people that opportunity.
Yeah, sweet. I'd like to hear more about the lead, especially the chronic conditions, and then the digital lead programs where you're in, and then how's that evolving?
Yeah, look, I think chronic condition management and digital therapeutics are, we're just at the very start of what digital therapeutics are going to do in terms of be a game changer for chronic condition management. Seeing markets like the US in particular, where there's big investment going into digital therapeutics to help manage individual conditions. So I think over time, we're going to find that those digitally led programs are going to continue becoming more and more a part of what doctors prescribe, to manage chronic conditions as opposed to just medication. We're going to find that the impact that they can have on behavioral change to allow people to actually manage or improve chronic conditions is certainly going to continue to evolve as people invest heavily into research and into understanding how to personalize and how to deliver digital care programs supported by the medical services wrapped around them that they need. So that's a very exciting space, and I think we're going over the next decade. We're going to see a significant investment into that, and and you know, will have an impact at a global scale on the outcomes that people have from a health perspective.
Yeah, that's so true. It's a massive space and problem, and I guess you guys are well addressing it. Maybe Elliot, in terms of user-centric patterns, what does this mean for clinic and hospitals, and how has Heroes, you know, worked with this? Maybe you can tell us more about that.
Sure. Yes. No, that's a great question, because as Nic was saying about the accessibility and the benefits around the customer-centric or patient-centric. One of the things that we've been seeing around the patient-centric side is so not only the technology kind of enabling more accessibility, as Nic was talking about, but also in addition to that, the ability to make it more personalized for the user. And one thing that we've really noticed is that by making it more personalized experience for the patient or the customer, it gives them more control and more understanding over their journey, which we've found can really help them become more invested in ways that they may not otherwise do. And in return to that, they become more motivated because they're more invested. And it also helps, we're finding that it also helps the hospital. So in a way that it creates sort of a flywheel effect. So even little things like maybe they may not attend appointments or feel the importance of attending appointments when they have one at the hospital or the clinic. Whereas now we're finding kind of an uptake on that. Even little things like, so for example, when you get your hearing device, whether it's a hearing aid or cochlear implant, because the patient care is more personalized and they're more invested, they're more likely to get more value, immediate value from their hearing device rather than returning it. And so I think by really helping the patient care and strengthening that through the user-centric side has also helped in a flywheel effect, help the hospitals and the healthcare service in that way. In addition to that, just really quickly, there is also the ability for clinics and hospitals to improve their service over a larger catchment area. For example, especially with hearing clinics, a lot of them, like for example, the hospital in Townsville, which has a catchment area over 400, 500 Ks, and being able to have that feedback loop or that communication loop with their patient, which also develop a stronger relationship between the two parties, and they can maximize outcomes more effectively through data-driven decisions that way.
Yeah, sweet. And is that like the hospital and clinics, are they playing an active role in this their like patient journey, or that's, you know, like?
Yes, that's a good question. They are playing an active role, and they're playing a very important role, as they do, but in the sense that the ability to, like for example, again, with the patient being more invested and having that data, for example, it's more data for the hospital to understand and be part of that patient journey. For example, we do a lot with training. Training often works best when it's done regularly. And so with that regular data that the clinician can also view and help their patient with, they're able to help with more, I guess, effective counseling or more appointment time. So for example, rather than going to have an appointment might go for an hour, and rather than half the hour being kind of a catch-up, they'll have a lot of the data up front and therefore be able to make more informed decisions when they have that appointment with their patient. So yeah, they're playing a very active role, and I think in order for it to work well, again with the flywheel effect, it just helped elevate everybody who's involved in that journey.
Yeah, sweet. Maybe Kaitlyn, in terms of like a challenge of covering every nursing specialty, as there are almost 100 of them, how do you tackle that challenge?
Yeah, totally. Thank you. Yeah, it is definitely a big challenge, like, because we started in nursing and we certainly focus in nursing a lot, even though we are expanding into other areas. Like, nursing is the biggest challenge because it is so varied, and it's not just registered nurses, but you have enrolled nurses, AINs, and then you kind of have then even underneath that support workers. So there's a lot of yeah, there's, you know, almost no role is the same sometimes with nurses, and there's kind of an endless opportunity to go into different spaces. I am really fortunate to have hired recently Luke Hoskins. He's my head of clinical education, and he is onto this problem. So while we service and you know, can provide training for a lot of different nurses right now, we're actually getting really into the personalization and the nitty-gritty of understanding every role and every specialty and what kind of training that they need. And so Luke is effectively, you know, sitting at his computer with this massive database and spreadsheet, and basically doing this massive mapping exercise to understand how, you know, what kind of training that we do need for all of these different specialties. And not even just that, but how do we take a person from one specialty or one level of role and put them into basically a different specialty, or level them up in some way in their current role. So yeah, very privileged that that's something that my team is actively working on at the moment, to build basically like a blueprint that's going to sit behind the platform to be able to do that, and really make everyone who signs up to the platform feel like we get them and we understand, you know, their career journey and where they want to go, and take them there as much as we can in an online sense.
And how do you make, because, you know, CPD, like you said, it's boring, and then you kind of,
yeah,
you know, you want to make it fun and engaging, and yeah, what's the challenge there? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging in the sense that I think because there's not much differentiation in the market, you're almost having to invent like a new way of delivering content and designing content. But, you know, when we think about what are things that, you know, hook us day to day, definitely TikTok and YouTube and podcasts and all of these social media content that already exists. It's just CPD. The idea of CPD isn't necessarily like wrapped around that, or the reporting side. And so we're drawing inspiration from that, not only for our own internal content creation, but also partnering with really amazing content companies that are more focused on the social media aspect, but we're bringing that into the, you know, the dusty, boring CPD world, because it's like there's all this amazing content out there. It's just not being, you know, structured in a way that it could actually, you know, deliver learning outcomes. So yeah, that's kind of how we're approaching it at the moment.
And can you link CPD and career outcomes, or can you link these two?
Yeah, so that's, yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the main focuses that we're working on at the moment. And we're working with really amazing recruitment agencies that specialize in healthcare. And we're also working with universities and hospitals to actually draw that link. Like, if you do undertake a certain pathway from Eduvidd, is that actually going to result in, you know, a diverser skill set, or is that going to increase your performance? So yeah, that's you know, we're setting up structures now to be able to prove, like, I obviously think that it is happening and that's where we're going, but we need to have the data as Elliot mentioned, like you've always got to be data driven in anything that you do, I'm sure. And like Nic is just addicted to spreadsheets and very data driven. So yeah, you always have to come back and not just be like, I know what's best, but rather look at the patterns in the data and make sure that you're delivering on what you said you would.
Yeah, sweet. Maybe Nic, in terms of, because you kind of you're doing every a couple of like maybe 6 months a new brand or a new product. How's that looking in the next couple of years or so?
So actually, I mean, we have initially launched the market with a few different brands, but what we're actually looking to do from here is expand the products and services under each brand as opposed to launch more new brands.
Yeah.
So I think in reality, you know, one of the things that we're trying to reduce is fragmentation in the healthcare industry. So our approach, I don't necessarily view as, you know, we've got some kind of demographically led brands other than Vitality, you know, which is kind of a unique product on its own. But in reality, we want to get to the point where you can come to one of those brands that currently exists and access a full suite of healthcare products and services. So whether it's a telehealth prescription or a medication delivery, it might be a health management program for a chronic condition. It might be looking at, you know, patient health record and other data. And so looking at how we bring that all into a single environment, and so using one backend to power the different consumer brands that we have. But yeah, our goal right now is not necessarily to roll out more brands, but build more capabilities and products and services.
Yes, sweet. And everyone, so if you have any questions, just pop them into the chat Q&A section, and I'll be reading them to our panelists in a minute or so. So maybe let's say maybe Elliot, any suggestion for others like working or wanting to innovate, like, and help shape the future of healthcare, and have learned throughout the development of Heroes, something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, John. I think one of the biggest things we've learned is really understanding of the why, especially in healthcare. The why things are done the way they're done. There may be, like, for example, you walk into a hospital and you see them all using paper-based methods as part of their record keeping. And rather than walking in and thinking, oh, we can make it all digital, and that would be more effective, just I guess understanding why it's paper-based. Maybe it's certain compliance. Maybe they don't have reliable internet in some cases, and or whether it's just something that nobody's really paid attention to, and I tend to call it like folklore, where it's just done because it's just how it's always been done, and there is an opportunity for it to be improved. But in order to really understand that properly, and we've been we've had the opportunity to look at both sides of this. So there are some things in healthcare, for example, the progress report, which we have as part of the experience in Heroes, to see how your auditory training progress is going. Originally, a lot of that was paper-based, and so we really tried to learn the why this is still paper-based, and it turns out it was just the way that it's always been done. And so there was a great opportunity to digitalize that and make it more effective and a stronger flexible feedback loop there. But then there's other cases where maybe the patient form would always need to be paper-based. So I guess the biggest thing was really understanding the why things are done a certain way, and before jumping in and trying to change everything.
Yeah, sweet. Before I ask some of the questions that are from the audience, is there something, Nic, Kaitlyn, that you had in mind to chat about? Maybe Kaitlyn?
Oh, put me on the spot, John. I think maybe hearing from the panel, I always like to focus a little bit on like the start of the journey, like what was the thing that actually triggered you to start like your companies, and what keeps you going? Because there's one thing to start a company, and then there's another thing to choose to do it every day
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not just throw it in the bin, you know?
Yeah.
So even Nic, if you want to start.
Nick, maybe?
Yeah, look, I think in terms of starting the business, I actually have found myself, always looking at the international markets to see what's happening in other markets in terms of, trends and all the rest of it. Had a couple of startups in the past as well, before launching Midnight Health. And so what I noticed, as we're moving into the digital health space, this was pre-pandemic, that, there's a lot of traction starting to happen with big US, digital healthcare companies with that direct to patient model, looking to, really improve and remove some of the friction from the healthcare experience. And so, really started to look at those markets and go, hey, this is a real opportunity to in a space where you could have a really big impact with, so many opportunities and problems to solve. And so was going through the process of actually, modeling this whole thing out. And then we went into the first lockdown and the pandemic started. And I guess, if timing ever seemed more, could never seem more perfect to start a digital healthcare business, right? And so that's kind of what kickstarted to move things forward. And I think, the other question around, what keeps you going, like one of the reasons why I specifically wanted to move into the healthcare space is that there's, and sometimes to our detriment, there's almost a never-ending list of opportunities and problems to solve in healthcare, right? It's highly complex, it's regulated, it's something that everybody needs. There's there's problems to solve or areas of improvement in almost every aspect of healthcare and healthcare management. And so, we have a roadmap that is already well beyond what we have capabilities to do, and there's many opportunities, and I think that's what's exciting about this space. And we're going to go through a huge change in healthcare over the next 10 years, and I think that's what's exciting, right, and keeps you working towards what we're doing.
And, sorry, you want to say something?
Dren, I'm obviously running this now, so
yeah. Well, I'm taking over again. Hey, someone's asking, Nic, when you created your company, did you look at founding individual services, or did you have an overall strategy to create a big brand that encompasses lots of areas of health? And then it's asking, are you services offered due to the community need, or do you look at market trends? That's an awesome question. Yeah.
So I guess, there's a couple of questions to unpack in there.
Yes.
So I think firstly, the first thing I'll say is that our vision and what we're looking to build at this point has definitely evolved over time. So, even though we only came to market in February last year, in the last 18 months, it's evolved significantly in terms of what we're looking to build and the vision for the company and how we think we can actually have a real impact on, improving healthcare and the customer experience in that. So our vision has certainly evolved over time. However, we did always set out with, wanting to build a more complete environment. And I could see that, offering many different services and products and healthcare solutions was certainly the opportunity that we saw. But what we wanted to do was to come to market in an area that we saw where there was, I guess, the greatest opportunity. And that for us was women's health with Yuli. We saw there was a couple of brands in Australia going really hard on targeting the men's space. And so, the women's space was underserviced, if anything. And so, we brought to market Australia's first emergency contraception delivery service, focused on other things like prescriptions and delivery of contraceptive pill and other female-centric conditions. But we saw that as the greatest starting point in terms of opportunity to get to market and get traction and start building towards our vision, allow us to raise capital and do all those sorts of things. But we always kind of knew that the opportunity was much bigger than that, and then it's evolved even more since. So now we have a very big vision in terms of what we're trying to do and how many products and services and different areas of health we think we can bring into a single environment, because that's what I think ultimately is how the leaders are going to evolve in this space over the next 5 to 10 years, and that's certainly our focus. With the other questions, services offered due to community needs or looking at market trends, it's a little bit of both, to be honest. So I think, as I mentioned, looking at the foundation of the business came from looking at market trends in international markets, and so there was certainly an area of looking at adoption of digital healthcare services and how that was evolving internationally, and the shift towards that demand that was starting to come from consumers, given that we have technologically advanced aspects managing most other areas of our life. So there's certainly a demand starting to come from a market trend perspective. But then there's also, a community need driving that. So, as we mentioned before, like accessibility is a massive one. When we first sat down and said, what is one of the greatest challenges in healthcare at the moment that we can play a role in improving, and that's accessibility for people who live in remote or regional areas, or people who live in metro areas can't get access to healthcare services some of the time when they need it, particularly if we're looking at like specialists and other areas. So I think it's a combo of both, and that's what kind of drives us to try and build this complete health ecosystem that we're on a mission to do. You're muted,
John, you're muted.
Oopsie. Someone's asking, how do you approach with engaging or having conversation with customers relevant to your field, particularly interstate, overseas, an example, tender proposal, email, or interest, and reaching in LinkedIn? Maybe Elliot, and actually Elliot, on top of that, I would like to have your thoughts on your global market, because you serve some the global market in general, and that was organically speaking. So I kind of like both. There's like two questions in this.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess we really started with identifying specifically what the problem was that we were addressing. And we started really small with customer insights. In my case, it was a lot of I guess the pain point was something that I experienced personally. So when I think I mentioned earlier that when I received my cochlear implant, that I received the CD as part of my auditory training. And therefore, I was waiting for a little bit for the, I guess, the solution to be a bit more accessible, I guess you would say. And so I guess with that in mind, I ended up creating, and again, what Kaitlyn was asking before, I started creating a couple of activities. So I've got a game design background originally, and started creating a couple of activities for myself to learn new sound. And so I shared that with my clinician, who was asking how I was improving and learning sounds that weren't necessarily from the resources they provided. And she found that quite beneficial, and she ended up sharing it with a lot of her clients and different hospitals and networks that she had. And so she became a really big champion, which was something I hadn't expected. So we sort of grew organically from the start, and we really focused on, I guess, creating networks, but not with the aim to sell something, but the aim to understand what their pain point is, and grow from that way. And then as you start doing further customer insight to who they may be, and also the other thing is that your audience may shift over time. So originally we were targeting clinicians, and then we organically grew more into the user-centric side and the patient-centric side. So it's interesting seeing that shift. But in terms of how we approach and have engaging conversations with different audiences, is essentially just reaching out to them and having a rough understanding of what their pain point could be, and learning from there. And then over time, you'll start seeing patterns in pain points, and then I guess building an MVP and showing them the MVP, and then building a more solid relationship from there. It's easy to get into the habit of just building a whole product and spending a lot of time and resources in that, only to find that it doesn't quite hit the pain point. So one thing that we've found helpful is to really, I guess, going back to understanding the why and how you're going to address that pain point. And from there, being user-centric, we really looked at, I guess, growth models that fit in with growth model that they use in other industries, which has been very beneficial in that phase, and how we can replicate that to be more organic and through word of mouth, which has helped in being a digital world. The world's a lot smaller now. So somebody in Australia could suggest it to someone in the US, for example, and vice versa. And so that's how we sort of started seeing a lot of the audience from Australia and the US growing.
Thanks, Elliot. Just a random question. That why is it inspired by Simon Sinek?
Yes, actually, yes.
Doesn't have to be.
He framed it in a much better way.
Yeah.
It was something that I found myself doing subconsciously.
Yeah.
But then when I came across his content,
Yeah.
he was literally reading my mind and
Yeah.
able to frame it in a better way. So
Yeah.
yes, in part.
Yeah, cool. All right. So, Kaitlyn, someone's asking, do you approach employers, for example, an aged care home, to market your company, or are you relying on health professionals to access your company independently? And then this is one. And then the second one, how do you overcome the challenge that CPD is usually provided by the employer?
Yeah, cool. No, really good question, actually. I appreciate that question. So certainly, even like going back to the previous question, you know, how do you approach others and how do you get clients? I think one of the most important things is you can't build an empire on your own. You know, you need really solid partners, and you need to find ways that you can, I suppose, put in effort into one bucket, and then that, you know, gets that word out to a larger cohort. So for us, you know, we have channel partners that we work with who basically promote our services. We also definitely work directly with organizations like aged care facilities. Lutheran Services has been a massive supporter of us, so shout out to them. We also are actively having conversations with Queensland Health and with you know, hospitals, because a lot of people recognize that, you know, CPD is not achieving the, you know, the outcomes that it's supposed to be, and it has become that tick and flick exercise. So there's a lot of organizations, not just the end, you know, the frontline clinicians, but also organizations that really want to see that kind of retention and engagement, you know, along the healthcare journey, and like, how can we help do that? So certainly I work with, yeah, an incredible variety of organizations and directly with clinicians to make sure that we're going from top down, bottom up approach to make sure that we meet in the middle, and we're you know, improving that CPD experience from every angle. So hopefully that answers that question. Yeah,
cool. So Adele is asking any tips on how to get into the health tech field as a designer who has no prior experience in this environment. I would partially want to answer this. With LumenX, we have seen a lot of founders that don't have a health background, and you don't have to, you know, have one as long as you have the passion to solve a problem. So you always, you know, start from the problem, and that will lead you to getting into the health tech. But I'll leave the other guys, maybe Nic, any tips on how to get into the health tech without a prior, you know, background in health?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're actually we're going through a recruitment process for a graphic designer at the moment. But we have a few designers in our team, and none of them have come from a health tech background. So I think, you know, at the end of the day, especially from a design perspective, you know, if it depends what type of role you're going for and what type of business in health tech. But if you have great designs and great work and a great portfolio that supports, you know, customer-centric design, and you know, maybe some UX experience that helps with you know, designing great experiences for a customer, you know, I think that's you know, applicable to most industries, right? So I think, yeah, I mean, in reality, it comes down to just networking with and hunting for opportunities within the health tech space. I think you'll actually find that it's not that difficult or a prerequisite to have you know, health tech experience. You know, there's not that many designers out there that are going to have it in the first place. So I think you're yeah, you're not really yeah, walking up a a hill to try and climbing a hill to try and get a role in health tech. Yeah, I think you just need to look for the businesses that represent something you want to work for and outreach to them.
And basically apply for Midnight Health.
Yeah.
Yeah, here it is answered. All right. I guess we're 3 minutes to closing this session, but maybe everyone, if you could like high level of what the health tech would look like in the next decade for you guys. Maybe take into context your company or industry and something like that, but very, very brief about that. Maybe Kaitlyn?
Yeah, no worries. As I mentioned, I'm a patient, so I live with MS, and so my journey has been fun. And I also wanted to become a doctor like 10 years ago, and I quit because I just thought healthcare was so inefficient and not technology driven, and it just frustrated me to the nth degree. Like, I want to live in a world in 10 years where, as Nic said, most of my my healthcare journey is online. I want to proactively be working on my health, and I want there to be programs and basically a new digital twin of healthcare that's being created outside of the current healthcare system that we have, and certainly wanting to see our healthcare professionals treated with as much care and respect as possible. And I think giving them education that they're really invested in, and having that patient-centric approach is something that I would love to see in the future.
Sweet. Elliot?
Yeah, like what Kaitlyn was saying, I think a lot of it is going to be more and more patient-centric. But not only that, in addition to that, I think it's going to be a lot more accessible for people who may not have that access to different healthcare for whatever reason that may be. And also, I think there's going to be even more data-driven decisions as we get more and more into a digital world.
I think that's super important what you just said, and that's kind of like the fundamental of the whole industry changing in the next decade. So, sorry.
No, that's exactly right. And I think in order to have more data-driven decisions, it can be enabled by having a more patient-centric approach.
Yeah, Nic?
Yeah, and to echo some of the points already made, I think it's ultimately our health starts at a digital front door, and our patient health record sits in a consolidated environment on its own that connects to the healthcare world around us. And that's how we can then make those data-driven decisions. We can push people in the right direction, and we can move seamlessly in between the online and offline environments as needed, but starting with that digital first environment. And that's how I think we uplift the healthcare experience and also better health outcomes and accessibility.
All right, sweet. Thanks, guys. All right, so we're at the end. I just want to thank you, everyone, for joining us today and being with us in the last hour. Wanted to thank our panelists, Kaitlyn, Nic, and Elliot. You guys do an amazing job with your startups and also help the ecosystem as a whole. I've seen you help also LumenX participants and also joining you as Elliot and Kaitlyn. You were on the last cohorts. But everyone, jump into Midnight Health. See what the guys are doing, their work that they're doing, or Eduvidd and MedLearn, and as well as Heroes, and they're tackling some real problems in this industry, and we are at LumenX are passionate also to support as well. Jump into LumenX as well, into the Health Accelerator. Look at for the next year, the applications will be open. If anyone's looking to solving any problems and looking to get into the program, reach out to me if you have any questions as well. But thanks. Thank you, everyone. And this was it. I'll see you in the next session, I guess.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Bye.